Seth watched intently as the new hire was guided through the office. His heart raced as he recognized that familiar face. It was Christy, his former university colleague for whom he had secretly been in love for years. She was even more stunning than in his memories, with brown hair cascading in soft waves over her shoulders and a warm smile lighting up her face. Seth could hardly believe that Christy was there, about to become his co-worker. He was sure she wouldn't recognize him. After all, he barely recognized himself when he looked in the mirror these days. The shy and awkward young man of the past had given way to a confident and successful man. In the years since university, Seth had completely transformed. The outdated haircut had been replaced by a modern and trendy style. The thick-framed glasses that used to hide his green eyes were now a thing of the past, thanks to laser surgery. Hours at the gym had sculpted his once slender body into an athletic and defined silhouette. Even his wardrobe had undergone a complete overhaul, trading in loose t-shirts and baggy pants for well-tailored suits and elegant shirts. But the most significant change was within him. The insecure boy who could barely make eye contact now radiated an aura of self-confidence. Seth finally felt comfortable in his own skin, embracing his qualities and accepting his flaws. Years of therapy and self-discovery had helped him overcome many of his emotional blockages. As he watched Christy from afar, Seth couldn't help but recall that fateful day in the university library. He had seen her sitting alone at a secluded table, a melancholic expression on her face as she wrote something on a piece of paper. Intrigued, Seth discreetly observed her as she carefully folded the note and placed it between the pages of a thick book, before returning it to the shelf and leaving hastily. Curiosity got the better of him, and as soon as Christy left the place, Seth stealthily approached the shelf. With his heart racing, he located the book in question and opened it, finding the folded note. He hesitated for a moment, internally debating whether or not he should read something so personal. Finally, his curious side won out, and he unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. The words he found there deeply impacted him. It was a touching message, written with an honesty and vulnerability that left him breathless. Seth read the note several times, feeling an inexplicable connection with those lines. Something in that message resonated within him, as if it had been written specifically to touch his soul. At that moment, Seth made a decision that would change the course of his life. He would keep that note and use it as a constant reminder to be kinder to himself. Christy's words became a personal mantra, something he turned to in moments of doubt and insecurity. The days following that episode in the library were confusing. Seth looked for Christy all over the campus, eager to see her again, but she seemed to have disappeared. When he finally mustered the courage to ask about her with some classmates, he discovered that Christy had abruptly dropped out of the course. No one knew for sure the reason, but rumors ranged from family issues to an existential crisis. Christy's sudden absence left him deeply shaken. Seth found himself imagining 1,000 different scenarios, worried about what might have happened to her. More than that, he felt guilty for never having gathered the courage to approach her and attempt a friendship. Perhaps, if he had done so, he could have helped Christy in some way. And now, after so many years, fate brought them face to face once more. Seth watched as Christy was introduced to the other staff members, her smile lighting up the room. He took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself for the moment he would be introduced. She probably wouldn't even remember him after all. To his complete surprise, as soon as Christy passed by his table, she stopped and looked at him with a gleam of recognition in her eyes. "Seth? Seth Miller, is that really you?" she exclaimed with genuine joy. Seth felt his face warm up, unable to believe that she had really recognized him. "Hello, Christy," he managed to stammer, standing up to greet her. "How amazing to find you here after so much time." The two exchanged a warm handshake. "Wow, you look so different," Christy remarked, looking him up and down with an appreciative smile. "I almost didn't recognize you." Seth felt a surge of pride at noticing the admiration in her gaze. They chatted briefly, exchanging the usual pleasantries between old acquaintances who chance upon each other. Seth could hardly contain his excitement. Christy was there, as beautiful as ever, and seemingly happy to see him. It was as if all his youthful dreams were coming true at once. When lunchtime arrived, Seth mustered all his courage and offered to show Christy the best places to eat nearby. To his delight, she readily accepted the invitation. The two of them left the office together, walking side by side through the bustling streets of downtown. Seth took her to a charming cafe just a few blocks from work, one of his favorite lunch spots. The cozy environment with its rustic wooden tables and soft lighting created the perfect ambience for a relaxed conversation. They placed their orders and settled at a table near the window where they could watch the streets hustle and bustle. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their careers, their families, and their experiences since college days. Seth was charmed by how easily he could express himself around Christy. It was as if all his former shyness had simply evaporated. Despite the curiosity that consumed him, Seth avoided bringing up the sudden disappearance of Christy in the past. Something told him it wasn't the right moment to broach a potentially delicate subject. Instead, he focused on getting to know the present-day Christy better, fascinated by each new detail he discovered about her. The days that followed were like a dream for Seth. He and Christy quickly established a routine of having lunch together, exploring new restaurants around the neighborhood, or sometimes just sitting on a bench in the nearby park to enjoy the sun while eating sandwiches. At the office, Seth would offer to help Christy whenever he could, showing her the company's systems and introducing her to colleagues. The more time they spent together, the more Seth felt attracted to Christy. It wasn't just her physical beauty that captivated him, but her captivating personality, her sharp sense of humor, and her keen intelligence. He loved the way she wrinkled her nose when she laughed, or how she absent-mindedly twirled a strand of hair while focusing on a difficult task. As the weeks passed, Seth felt it was becoming increasingly difficult to hide his feelings. Part of him wanted to declare himself, confess that his admiration for Christy went far beyond friendship. But the fear of rejection, that old acquaintance from his teenage years, still haunted him. What if he was misinterpreting the signals? What if Christy saw him only as a good friend and co-worker? It was on a Friday, during yet another of their lunches together, that Seth finally mustered the courage to bring up a subject that had been intriguing him for weeks. They were sitting in their favorite cafe, savoring fresh salads and chatting animatedly about their plans for the weekend, when Seth took a deep breath and said, "You know, Christy, there's something I've wanted to ask you for a while now," he began, feeling his heart race. Christy looked at him with curiosity, encouraging him to continue with a nod. I was really surprised when you recognized me on the first day. I mean, I've changed so much since college, and honestly, I thought I was practically invisible back then." Christy frowned, looking genuinely confused by Seth's words. "What do you mean, Seth? Of course I would remember you. You were the smartest guy in our class, did you know that?" she replied with conviction. Seth stared at her, open-mouthed, unable to believe what he was hearing. Christy continued, "Seriously, didn't you notice how everyone talked about your work, about your brilliant ideas in class? The teachers loved you, and most of the students bet that you would be the most successful in the class after graduation." Christy's words left him stunned. Seth had never imagined that anyone even noticed his presence in college, let alone admired him. It was as if his entire understanding of that time in his life was being turned upside down. I had no idea," he murmured, still processing the information. "I always thought I was just another face in the crowd, you know. Especially next to people like you, Christy. You were so confident, so full of life. I felt like a complete nobody in comparison." Christy let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, Seth, if you only knew how insecure I felt inside. All that confidence you saw. It was mostly a facade." That confession caught Seth completely off guard. How could someone as amazing as Christy feel insecure? It was almost inconceivable to him. At that moment, Seth realized that maybe it was time to share something he had been keeping to himself for a long time. With slightly trembling hands, he took his wallet and pulled out a carefully folded piece of paper. Christy watched him with a mix of curiosity and confusion as he extended the paper towards her. "There is something I need to show you," Seth said softly. "Something that changed my life in a way you can't even imagine." Christy took the paper carefully, as if she were receiving something precious. When she unfolded it and began to read, Seth saw her eyes widen in recognition. It was the letter she had left in the library book so many years ago. She read the letter that said, "There are days when life weighs heavily, and all we need is a restart. Simple, silent, just ours. Today I decided to restart. Not with big changes, but with kindness towards myself. If you need this too, know, you are not alone. You don't have to always be fine, nor have all the answers. Being human is task enough. Take care of yourself as you would take care of someone you love. You deserve this care." "My God, Seth, how did you—" Christy stammered, looking from the paper to him repeatedly. Seth then told her about that day in the library, how he had seen her hiding the note in the book and how, driven by curiosity, he ended up reading it. He explained how those words had touched him deeply, becoming a kind of talisman that helped him overcome his own insecurities and emotional limitations. "This letter, it gave me strength in the moments I needed it most, Christy," Seth confessed, his voice laden with emotion. "Whenever I felt lost or discouraged, I would read it again. It reminded me to be kind to myself, that it was okay not to have all the answers. It was like a beacon guiding my way out of the darkness." Christy listened attentively, her eyes filled with unshed tears. When Seth finished speaking, she remained silent for a few moments, as if absorbing everything she had just heard. "Seth, I don't even know what to say," she finally spoke, her voice choked with emotion. "I never imagined those words could mean so much to someone. In fact, I barely remember writing them." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "That day in the library, I was going through a very difficult time. I had just been diagnosed with depression and was struggling to cope with it. Writing that note was a kind of catharsis, a way to pour out everything I was feeling." Seth looked at her, feeling a mixture of admiration and compassion. Christy continued, "After that, I ended up taking a break from college to get treatment. It was a difficult decision, but necessary. I spent months in therapy, taking medication, learning to deal with my inner demons." "I'm sorry you went through that, Christy," Seth said gently, resisting the urge to reach for her hand across the table. "It must have been very hard." Christy nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "It was, but you know what? That experience made me stronger. It taught me a lot about myself, about the importance of taking care of my mental health. And now, knowing that somehow that moment of vulnerability ended up helping you too. That's incredible, Seth. Truly incredible." The two were silent for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. Seth felt as if an invisible barrier between them had been broken down. That conversation had created an even deeper connection, a mutual understanding that went beyond simple friendship or physical attraction. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Seth," Christy said softly, handing the note back to him. "It means a lot to know that my words had such a positive impact on your life." Seth carefully placed the paper back in his wallet, feeling strangely light. It was as if a weight he had been carrying for years had finally been lifted from his shoulders. "You know, Christy," he began, gathering all his courage, "there's something else I would like to tell you. Something I've been holding back for a long time." In that moment, looking into Christy's eyes, Seth felt all his former shyness dissipate. Here was the girl he had always been in love with, the person whose words had helped him become who he was today. And for the first time in his life, Seth felt truly ready to open his heart. "Christy, I've always liked you. Since college. In fact, I think I never stopped liking you," he confessed with the words flowing naturally. "Meeting you again after all these years, working by your side, getting to know you better, it has only made my feelings grow even stronger." Christy was looking at him with an expression that was hard to decipher, a mix of surprise and something else that Seth couldn't identify. He continued, determined to let it all out. I know that it might be a lot to process at once, and I completely understand if you don't feel the same. But after keeping this for so long, after everything we shared today, I felt that I needed to be honest with you. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity for Seth. His heart was beating so hard he was sure Christy could hear it. He anxiously watched every change in her expression, trying to anticipate her reaction. Finally, a radiant smile spread across Christy's face. "Oh, Seth," she said softly, reaching out to touch his hand across the table. "You have no idea how happy this makes me." Seth felt a wave of relief and joy wash over him. "Really?" he asked, barely daring to believe what he was hearing. Christy nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Since we reconnected, I've felt something special for you. Your kindness, your intelligence, the way you make me laugh. All of it attracted me from the first day. But I was afraid of ruining our friendship, of misinterpreting things." Seth couldn't contain the smile spreading across his face. It was as if all his dreams were coming true at once. "So, what do we do now?" he asked, feeling both anxious and euphoric. "How about we start slow?" Christy suggested, gently squeezing his hand. "We could have dinner together this weekend, outside of the work environment, see where this takes us." "I'd love to," Seth replied, feeling happier than he had ever felt in his entire life. As they returned to the office, walking side by side with their fingers intertwined, Seth couldn't help thinking about how life takes incredible turns. That note left in a book years ago had been the first chapter of a story that was only just beginning to be written. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.